Welcome back to Life in Cyber. We're talking Crowdstrike today. Let's tech to it.
I had my other mic this whole time. I could have just switched over. Oh well.
Or an orange.
You get to deal with my shitty mic for 2 weeks in a row. Congratulations.
Yeah, you're welcome, viewers. The microphone sucks.
Not as bad as CrowdStrike.
So anyway, you all have probably already heard about the CrowdStrike outage by now. It caused they're calling it the largest IT outage that has ever happened in history. It's been every headline. It's impacted every industry. We get it.
It's old news now.
I think we're all kind of over talking about it, but we need to talk about it. But I don't think we need to go into too much detail about what happened. But for those that somehow did miss it,
who's sleeping under a rock,
a super quick rundown. Which one of you knows what happened? Because I kind of I'm just kidding. I don't know how to read.
There was a content update that they pushed down without testing, and it broke everything. Like all at once.
Yeah. So it caused blue screen of death on 8.5 million Windows devices, according to Microsoft, across every industry.
Their entire central data center. That was awesome. Thanks.
Impacts on finance, healthcare, flights were grounded. I think the stock exchange was hit. But no, I think the one key thing is it wasn't a cyber attack. It was just a bad update pushed out. Caused problems.
Definitely an incident.
Definitely an incident. I saw a number today that said the financial impact globally currently is estimated like $15 billion. So this is going to be a big one. But the biggest part,
Southwest was fine.
The biggest part that I think really pissed off most of the people in our industry was that the fact that remediation had to be manual. So to fix it, you had to go to every single computer. Microsoft's guidance was to reboot a machine up to 15 times, which was an official guidance for a couple of days. And then the other thing is you had to basically reboot into safe mode and delete a file. But then that got infinitely more complex when you throw in things like mandatory encryption. So if you got BitLocker on these machines, or if you're in a company that uses LAPS for local admin passwords, it became a huge problem.
You know people I talked to who was like, I don't know the local admin, and so they couldn't fix it. It was fun.
So many. So anyway, that's the brief rundown. But what we want to talk about today is what comes next. What are the long-term repercussions? How do we see the globe or the planet basically reacting to this issue? Because this was such a massive issue. It impacted everyone. And there are still companies playing catch up today, right? So what comes next, guys?
Stop using managed service providers. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, the first thing that happens next is CrowdStrike's going to get proper QA and proper change management.
How many people are going to be on the market, you think?
Ooh, I don't think much.
I think at least one. I hope I'm not that guy. Oh. Imagine, like I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I've never pushed out an update that took down the entire globe. So that makes me feel better about some of the things I've done.
Hey, so you got fired on, July 23rd. Why was that? Crickets.
I think there's going to be a complete overhaul of their testing and deploying their updates. And in fact, I think CrowdStrike already announced that they were going to add like phased deployment of updates. So that way, if there is an issue, they're like lower impact. And I think they're working on a few other things, but I suspect they're going to do a complete overhaul of all of that. Like they kind of have to at this point. And to be fair, CrowdStrike's one of the more reputable companies, and they've been very communicative through this entire issue. So which I don't think we're used to.
No, yeah, they've been very good about talking to everybody, but what I'm more worried about is like, okay, you can't tell me they don't have a CI/CD pipeline and that this probably wouldn't have been caught. Somebody didn't follow processes. Somebody did not follow procedure. And
allegedly, this was an emergent update, which made it bypass all of that process and procedure.
And you can see how that bites everyone in the ass.
Yes. So there's now going to be a way to vet the emergent issues on top of the regular change control process that they already have in place. Is the summary that I got from multiple different people. Because I don't know about you, but how many of your organizations have came back to you and said, okay, promise me this is never going to happen to us with our product?
Can't.
Because that's what I got to do all week, is promise me that this won't happen. Well, I can't do that. Well, why not?
Then you're over there asking the vendor for a guarantee, right? Like, hey, can you put your name on the line for me?
Yeah, it'd be like, I don't vet their code. I'm sorry.
And that's where I'd say, like, okay, if you want to do that, then we need to go to every vendor and renegotiate our BAAs, right? And I'm not sure that vendors are open to that. That's a whole other topic. And
I don't think companies want to pay for that.
No.
No, they did. You got a gift card for $10.
Which they reenacted really fast. Did you see that?
I did see that. I'm not sure how much that actually went through. I wondered if it was just like a customer service thing, but a $10 Uber Eats gift card, that's not even the delivery fee for a coffee.
Right.
Like, you can't even get a coffee with that.
I think, Josh, you were more worried about the CEO sitting up on the hill, right?
Yeah, I'm always worried about that kind of stuff. I think leadership sometimes gets a bad rap, only because a lot of it falls on them, and I think there's a problem when it comes to almost accountability. A lot of guys are just kind of just pushing this on someone else. We've seen it with SolarWinds. The CISO is the one to blame. He's the one that's getting the blame. He's getting the fine. And I think it's a bit of a quick trigger to be blaming the executives who, yes, at the end of the day, it falls on them and they should be taking a chunk of that blame. But, it's a lot of it falls on the company as a whole. A lot of these companies, and I know I've seen it plenty of times with, clients that we've spoke to or prospective clients that we spoke to. They're not, once you show them the price of doing things right, a lot of them fall back and they go, well, can we do without this? Can we do without that? I was like, you can, but you run in this risk. And we just saw it happen. There should be a testing process for emergent updates. Even if you just push it to a bunch of machines, reboot them and make sure they come back up, like do something.
You know how when you opt in, people, when you're buying a product and you opt in to being one of the early adopters, that's what you're signing up for, just so you know. If you're an early adapter of something, you're vetting out their alpha and beta. So
I love how you're saying adapter versus adopter, because it's kind of like an extension of them. You're like, yep, you're not even an adopter anymore. You're part of them. Welcome.
You are. You pretty much are, because they're going to push those updates out to you, and if it breaks it, they're going to be like, well, you kind of agreed to it.
Did you not read your TOS? I think my favorite part of the whole scenario was the last 5 days they've dropped 26% in their stock price. So their confidence definitely dropped quite a bit over this.
Huge reputation hit. I want to comment, though, on Josh's point about being nervous about holding executives accountable. I think the software industry is one of the industries that has the least amount of accountability, right? Like, There's a lot of companies, like if you look in finance, who has to deal with a lot of that software. They're so heavily regulated that they take cybersecurity so incredibly seriously, right? Like, and I'm not just talking about like SOX and gosh, what are the other compliance things? Where's my brain? Hello? I just did a report on this.
Here we go. We'll do HIPAA. We'll do PCI. We'll do GLBA. Which one do you want?
I was looking for PCI. Thank you. So we're going into PCI DSS. We've got so much like controls and regulation that are basically required. PCI DSS isn't even government regulation. Nope. That's a regulation they put on themselves from credit card companies. And they take it so seriously as a result. And we've seen the fragility of the finance industry when you see a bank run happen, right? And we saw a bank run happen not even a year ago with the fall of what was that bank? Something National. It was one of the crypto. We saw it with the crypto bank. We saw it with the specialized, basically.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Silicon Valley one.
Silicon Valley. That's the one I'm talking about too. Yeah, that was what I was trying to think about. I was like, I know it's SVN, but I forget what it stands for. Forgive me. But yeah, no, Silicon Valley caused a bank run almost, and we were so close to having that issue. We actually saw another bank fail as a result of that. And so seeing the fragility of the finance industry, and then seeing that this kind of thing can impact that, all this can do is say, hey, you can't access your money for a day. That can cause another bank run, because the fragility of the finance industry is literally based on public opinion of whether or not they think their money is safe, right? And all you have to do is give them one hint that it's not, and they're all going to get it.
Man, we're gonna just say the word of the day is fragility, because I always called it frugality. I don't know. It's just like I had to like Google it while you're talking to say the quality of economical with money or food, thriftiness. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
No, that's frugality. When I say fragility, I mean it's fragile, as in it can easily break.
Okay, let me spell this right. Fragile.
Frapeility. I may have invented a word to make this point, but
the quality of being easily broken or damaged.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. Yep.
All right, we got a word of the day.
There you go. Taught you something today.
Fertility.
Fragility. Something can break.
Not fertility.
No, Jesus Christ. Fuck.
No, I think you're 100% correct on there needs to be additional regulation, but there's going to be one of these things that's like, okay, do you whenever you work for a company, it's always, do you want it quick and at 80%, or do you want it perfect and late, right? And when you're dealing with cybersecurity, timeliness is critical, right? And so if we're talking about a 0 day, do I have time to test it? Am I willing to take the risk? And I think we need to put that more on the companies to decide whether or not they want to take the risk. Right now with these MSPs, what I've been noticing, I dealt with it with Palo Alto, now we see it with CrowdStrike, is they almost run on their own. You kind of give them an MSA to say, I want you to protect my company, and you basically give them the free reign to install anything on your servers. I don't think that's the right answer. And I think we're going to find ourselves pulling back a little bit from that.
If you go with the defaults, yes. I mean, the majority of them, they'll say it's just going to work, and we're going to set it up. We're going to use you to deploy out the initial installation, and then we'll take it from there. Well, then you start pushing back, well, what if your agent breaks it? Well, then you can go N-1. Okay, well, then I'll stay one version behind. But the special thing about this is that it was just a content update. It wasn't a major agent redistribution. It wasn't anything that was supposed to interact at the kernel level. It's just a content update that ended up interacting with the driver engine.
Yeah,
Is that what
specific
ended
file.
up
It was like a
breaking it?
signature update.
It's like a signature update.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the big thing that I've been noticing with these guys is I don't care if you're talking heuristics or if you're talking signatures, it doesn't matter. The moment you give them free reign to quarantine or block a file on your system without you knowing it, and they can add these definitions at will, it's very easy to make a mistake. And maybe it doesn't affect everybody else, but maybe that file is important for your organization. If they block that one file, it may take you down, but maybe not anyone else. So what I'm trying to say is, like, where is that fine line? Where is this fine tuning of, I want to be protected, but I don't want to take the risk. I want it tested, but it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, which way do you want to go with this?
I personally think it comes down to the organization that you work at, their risk appetite is ultimately what it comes down to me. If I'm working at an organization and I'm the architect and I'm setting everything up, I'm going to look at all of my security controls and say, okay, I've implemented everything. I am perfect. I am Shannon. I did everything great. But let me take a step back and see how others are going to fuck up thine environment. And then try and create those scenarios in my head. Like, do I want to be the latest adopter of Windows updates? How do I want to vet those out? Do I have test environments? Do I not have test environments? Do I do the same thing with my antivirus agents? And now do I do the same thing with content updates? Am I an early adopter with content updates? At what nth degree do you go to protect thy environment when every single time you do something like that, you are increasing the amount of risk that you're bringing in because you're a later adopter?
And you're actually adding a lot more work too, because a lot of these organizations don't have large cyber defense organizations, right? You may be one of 4 in a large ass organization while everything else is outsourced already to CrowdStrike. So
Right.
you're trusting them.
Am I going to have to bring on an additional FTE or create an additional FTE in order to manage the overhead that I've created to try and counter product what is going on around me?
And FTE I think is full-time employee, by the way, everyone.
And that's part of the problem too, is I think as we become architects, we try to build our systems based off of our current staff or our current size. But then we downsize, or the business takes a turn and you have to let go of guys. And then you realize, oh crap, I can't take care of this. And you're like, you know what? Let CrowdStrike do that. Let Palo Alto do that. And then you run into this problem. You're like, crap. So you have to take that risk assessment as well when you're, looking at your IT staff and saying, okay, can I cut this back without hurting the corporation long term?
Well, and I have to say too, John, you mentioned the fact that like a lot of companies like CrowdStrike, or really any software company at this point, they do the let's push something out at 80%. I would argue at 70%. But the minimum viable product concept, right? Like the concept of speed being more important than quality. I'm in the boat of people that is so frustrated with that mentality. I'm so tired of just getting really crap products and beta testing for them in my production environment because they can't finish their testing. They want to test in my environment instead of theirs. I don't like that. Why are they pushing that cost to me? Do your due diligence, get your shit working, and then sell it to me. It's really annoying.
Well, you're one of the people that can stay on the older software then. That works, instead of going to the latest and greatest piece of software.
I want the latest and greatest piece of software to be developed and done before it's shipped to me. That's my problem.
Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yes, I can.
I mean, there's so many different sectors that have to compromise on this.
I can have my cake and eat it too by being patient, right? The thing that I sacrifice for that quality is speed.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that.
Patient by staying on the older version.
Yeah, but you now increase risk of, are you willing to take the risk that you might have a 0-day in your environment that someone's going to exploit over having a better quality software that may be okay, right? Over having that 70% software that 0 days fixed, but now do you take the risk of it not being tested?
Again,
it goes I would weigh these risks as a 0-day versus an inside threat actor, right? Because if you're working with an MSP or a software application like this and they have full reign over these devices, that's essentially the same as giving someone administrative access. And in this case, someone who doesn't work for you, right? That's roughly what we're saying here. And we're basically saying that risk is okay because we have a BAA with it. We can hold them accountable if something goes wrong, and we will, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that something's not going to go wrong. And to Shannon's point, you now have to convince CIOs or CISOs at this point that this isn't going to happen to us. But we can't, because the only thing that's protecting us is this agreement with that company, not the fact that company has good practices, because they're going to make mistakes. They're human, right? So what's the risk between that and the 0-day? And to me, they're roughly equivalent, but I also consider an inside threat actor to be a potentially larger impact.
I think that's dealing about criticality, right? When you're looking at your assets, some assets may be more critical to your infrastructure than other assets. So maybe you have a tiered system, right? Some of your system is on the beta software, and if you don't see any issues out of that, maybe you then push it to your critical systems, right? And it's basically having a test bed in your live production environment. You push it to the systems that you're okay to take an outage if you need to, but you're trying to weigh that risk. And this is something that a lot of organizations try to do, because how many organizations out there do not have a test bed? They don't have a way to test their patches, right?
Unless you're in the private sector and have money coming out of your ass.
Yeah. When I was in the private sector, plenty of test beds. In the public sector, no. I'm lucky to have the gear I got. Let's just be honest.
I mean, I'm tired of picking on CrowdStrike, though. I mean, if you look at it throughout the years, do you remember Print Nightmare? It wasn't that long ago, right? Yeah. Remember when Microsoft tried to patch it? What happened?
They made it worse.
It caused blue screens of death on a lot of different things because it interacted with a bad driver or an Intel driver, something like that. The same with Intel. Should we hold them accountable now for updating their drivers because it's going to break Microsoft patches? How far down the rabbit hole do we go with this? Do you remember WannaCry when they tried to patch it and it ended up making things blue screen?
And you're right. It's not just CrowdStrike, and that's something that the industry always goes towards. They just go for the biggest actor at the time, right?
Yes.
And I agree with you. We need to hold the software vendors a little more accountable, but not just the software vendors. We need to hold the businesses more accountable, because in their terms of service, they lay it out in black and white. There is a risk there, and they tell you. It's just CEOs don't care because of risk transference, right? You like, that's not my problem. If it breaks, I can blame them. It's the blame game again. And that's something that I hope that we can get our C-levels out of that mentality, right? It's we're all in it together. If you're going to break me, I'm going to break you. Like, we have to work together to be successful.
Honestly, I think, and this is just my brain thinking, the reason why people are so upset about this in the IT world is the Fat Johns of the world have to actually get a keyboard and go and walk to the workstation and reboot it 15 times and connect to it. If we could have remotely fixed it, I don't think it would have been this big of a blowback.
I actually agree with that.
I'm going to slightly disagree, only because I think the biggest reason we're frustrated is that it was out of our control 99% of the time. If we have no ability to do that, and that's that risk that you have to take, and you have to look at and say, hey, do I want to filter these myself now that we know that CrowdStrike might mess up, or any vendor for that matter? It could be CrowdStrike, it could be Cisco, it could be Palo Alto. It doesn't matter. Anyone can make this mistake at any time. But yeah, maybe this is one of those situations where we do more due diligence. So like, all right, what's your CI/CD pipeline look like? What testing do you do? If there is one of these emergent patches, what is tested? If nothing, then leave those off my system until I can test them. It's just more. It's more overhead for us, but unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast.
Well, you hit it right on the money. A lot of these people we just trust, right? And we're out of that day. We can't trust but verify. We can't go that. We have to embrace the zero trust model. We need to start bringing more of that into our environments. And what I mean by that is any type of patches. I don't care if they come from Microsoft. They do need to go through Artifactory. They need to go through a CI/CD pipeline. They need to go through some kind of way to test it, to check it, to make sure it's okay. Even if it's automated, I love automation. It keeps my job easy. But we just need to have those processes vetted out. No longer can we just let any patch enter our industry, into our network, and trust that it's not going to take us down.
Well, and I think, Josh, you've got the most practical approach. It's definitely like the logical answer to like proactively preventing this. But I agree with Shannon. The main reason everybody was grumpy was over the last 5 days, we've had to manually touch and fix 8.5 million devices. That is so many. I knew one person in California who was responsible for trying to take care of 30,000 before Monday on multiple different branches. They weren't in the physical location. And so they had to basically call everyone in over the weekend, try to coordinate this massive effort. But then they also had to deal with the complexity of it's not just rebooting 15 times. It's dealing with BitLocker. It's dealing with lapse. It's dealing with all this stuff. It was a giant pain in the ass. And I feel for everyone who had to work through that. So Shannon's right. That's why people are angry. Josh, you're right. That's the practical answer moving forward.
Job security, guys. Come on. Why are you guys so angry?
I do think, though, and this is something that I want to call out, I think this is pointing out a major flaw that we have in kind of how we operate with tech companies right now. We are in a world of these massive tech companies, and most of them software driven, where they have such a large impact from just one company. And I think that that's an issue, right? Like we see that with Intel having kind of dominance in the CPU factor for businesses. We see Microsoft having dominance when it comes to businesses. We see things like CrowdStrike, et cetera. All of these companies are so darn huge that their impact is just I guess hard to even put to words at this point. Like, I think that's a major flaw. One of the things that we've talked about in the United States is we haven't really put in antitrust laws or really enforced antitrust laws or monopoly laws in a long time when it comes to tech conglomerates. And we don't really know how. And those laws haven't been updated with modern business models. So I think there's like some regulation changes that we could make here that could help prevent this as well, because in my opinion, the tech industry in the United States is incredibly underregulated. We see the EU kind of taking charge on a lot of that. Gosh, look at that dog. But we see the EU taking a massive step forward in that regard. And I suspect we're going to see the EU kind of crack down on CrowdStrike more so than the United States will. But I hope we see some changes in regulation as well to try and mitigate some of this risk proactively.
The only problem is we've always seen this. Remember the capacitors that were exploding, and we've seen this so many times over and over and over and over. Not just with software companies, hardware companies, all across the spectrum. So you're right. We need to bring more, separation. There's too many of just one conglomerate. But the problem is when China can do it for 2.5 cents and this guy can do it for 3.5 cents, I'm going to go for the 2.5 cents guy. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and that's why we have Intel. I mean, AMD's trying to hang on. They're trying. They're doing okay. And I think Intel wants AMD around just because there is some kind of, there's competition there. It does prove. But at the same time, Intel still has the market. Right. So that's when we start seeing Spectre and Meltdown and other things as well.
AMD has the better stock price, though.
Right. Which reminds me, I need to go buy some CrowdStrike, because now that they dropped, I have a feeling they're going to go back up.
Buy the dip.
Buy the dip.
I'm also very, very prone on the Intel conversation right now. I've got a lot of friends who have a 13900K processor, and those things are absolute trash on reliability. We've got voltages
Are they?
that are causing them to die. Yeah, they're
Mine
so
seems
unstable.
fine. I'm on one right now.
You're lucky. You're lucky.
I'm like 13900. Hey, that's mine.
13900K and the Gen 14 one's having trouble too. Intel's not doing well this year.
Right.
All right. So I guess the message here is, if you're in software, don't be like CrowdStrike. Be better.
I have the 13th gen right now. Is 13th gen okay? I just had to look it up.
13th gen is the 13900K.
God damn it. Okay, never mind.
We're so far off topic.
I think
Be
we should
better
end
than
on that.
CrowdStrike, but
I think the music's going to be super loud here.
Like let's
No.
give CrowdStrike the benefit. They do communicate really well. They did respond to this pretty decently, in my opinion. Minus the $10 Referees card, that was pretty tasteful.
Yeah, because I never got one, so
Yeah. What the hell? Where's mine?
I'm not a CrowdStrike customer.
Me neither. I'll keep them off my shit list for now, though.
But anyway, till the next cyber attack, huh?
Yep. To the
This
next
one
one,
is a
guys.
cyber attack.
Oh, incident, guys, incident.
Bye, guys.
Subscribe.